May 17th, 2023 meeting of the Tahoe Truck and Sanitation Agency to order. And
recording in progress.
Excellent. And let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we do roll call.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and Rochelle, if you could do the roll call.
Yes. Director Tresson.
Here.
Director Wilson.
Here.
Director Cox.
Yes.
Director Smelser.
Here.
And President Wilkins.
Present. And just for, I guess for the record, so this is an in-person meeting, but Director Cox's remote attendance has been noticed for the requirements of the Brown Act.
Correct.
Great. All right, next on our agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board on any item not on the agenda for up to 5 minutes. Is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Seeing none, move on. Next on the agenda is Professional Achievement Awards and Anniversaries. Vicki.
Good morning, President Wilkins and Directors. Vicki Lufrano, Human Resources Administrator. As we generally do on a monthly basis at the board meeting, I would like to acknowledge employees for, in this case, 2 5-year anniversaries. And those 5-year anniversaries are for myself and for Angelina Henson. Congratulations. Thank you, Angelina, for your service to TTSA. Thank you. All right.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Next on the agenda is our consent calendar. I understand Blake may have 1 or 2 items that he'd like to pull. Does staff have any items they'd like to pull from consent?
We do not.
No? Is there any member of the board that would like to pull any numbers from the consent calendar?
I was wanting to pull number 2.
Number 2? Okay. Pull that. Any other items that any board member would like to pull from consent?
No.
Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion on the balance of the consent calendar?
Also move.
Moved by Director Smeltzer.
Second.
Seconded by Director Wilson to approve items 1, 3, 4, and 5 on the consent agenda. Those in we need to do roll call.
Director Tresson.
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Director Cox.
Yes.
Director Smelser.
Yes.
And President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thanks. And item 2 is the first reading, waiving the first reading and introduction of ordinance 2-2023, amending ordinance 2-2015 as amended, making conforming changes to agency connection charges. Blake?
Yeah, so I wasn't familiar with this language in there, and since it's a change in our fees to the customers, I thought it'd be good to possibly get a little bit explanation of what exactly is being proposed in this ordinance.
Perfect. So this is in quick summary, this is the ordinance that we are doing to align the tables between the sewer connection fees or the sewer rate fees and the connection fees. So there's some changes to the table. There are not any changes to the rates for connection fees. So let me go to the exhibit. Sorry. So there's some language in the ordinance that we're changing. The first, I'm looking at the actual ordinance itself, 2-223. The first 3 are just basic, or the first 2 are just basic language for that with meeting the government code, and that we are amending the ordinance 1-2000 or 1-2019. In the section 3, this is Exhibit A, which is the table that we're updating so that we can have both of our rates in sync to help with our billing. And then A5 is interim connection charges. This is the way we currently charge swimming pools, spas, private schools, and boarding schools on the interim. And so when we go through the rate fee study, or the connection fee study, and when we update the agent, we have it's 2-2015, which is our rules and regs. We are working with legal and internally with Celeste and myself to update that document to a code. So it's easier to pull things from it, to amend them as we need to. That's not ready to be done. We won't be finishing that agency code with the updates in it until after we finish the connection fee study. But this interim charge right here on A5, these are the way that we're charging them now, and we're going to keep charging the swimming pool, spa, private school, and boarding school this way until we update the agency code and the connection fee study. We just wanted to have that there so that we didn't have to come back and make another change to the table, because we want to get the tables aligned.
Okay, so just so I understand, Crystal, it's basically we're not changing fees, we're kind of changing how they're presented.
Yes, we're changing the tables to be aligned, and we're removing a couple items from the existing table. And in removing those items from the existing table, we need to have this interim so that it doesn't change the fees, because we cannot change the fees.
Okay.
So
Our current ordinance 1-2015 has a list of connection types and connection fees. We're changing that table. We're not changing any of the fees. We're just, okay, I thought that there was some slight tweaks in the amount we charge for connection fees for certain customer classes, but we're not
changing any of
those
that.
fees.
All we're doing is we are changing the layout of the table. So the 2-2015 is our rules and regs. 1-2019 and 2-2019, I believe, are the updates to the connection fees we did back in 2019. Those are still in place. We are not changing that. That still stays, those fees and everything from when you guys changed. It was before my time, but when we went to the 5,000 and the square footage and stuff like that, none of that is changing. The only reason we are having to have this table A5 is because in the table that we are updating for the connection fees to line them up, we changed the way the wording in that and the references in that, and we need to have that interim table showing that we're not changing those fees for now until we actually update the agency code and we update the connection fees.
Did we create some connection types or customer classes as part of our service charge update back in 2015 that didn't get captured on the connection fee
Other way around.
table?
It was the other way around. So when
Okay.
we did the connection fees in 2019, we disconjointed the sewer
Okay.
service charges and the connection fees. So we've had to look at everything. When Celeste does the billing and stuff, she has to look at that to see what falls in the current for the connection fee, but then turn around and apply the sewer service charge.
So we're just making sure that there's appropriate customer classes in both of them.
There's.
We're not actually adjusting the user fees.
We are not.
Okay.
We are not changing the connection user fees at
Okay.
all.
Okay.
And
Thank you for
the other big
clarifying
thing
that.
that we've changed is we've changed the code, the TTSA code, to make them more appropriate. So when you look at this exhibit, it matches, the code and the description, the type, match between the sewer service charges and the connection fee tables.
Okay. And then just go ahead, Andrew.
Two items that may help as well, just procedural matters. This item is on for first reading, and it sort of assumes that you take action on the rates today. And as Crystal was saying, the idea behind this ordinance is once you update the rates, there will be a disconnect between your connection charge connection types and your rate connection types. This will fix that issue by bringing the two together, but it is only on for first reading at this meeting. It will come back to you for actual consideration and approval at your next meeting. The other issue to keep in mind is, as Crystal was saying, we are working on a potential codification of your ordinances, which would put together one large code book for the agency, which will make some of these issues about 1-2015 as amended by 2019, it will make those issues moot and your code much easier to follow. You can expect that to come back at some point this summer for potential adoption of the board.
So did you say that this is just a first reading and it would come back, but the item was agendized as waiving the first reading?
Correct.
So I'm sorry, I'm confused.
So the way the government code works on this item is if you don't waive the first reading, then one of your staff members has to read the whole ordinance to you aloud to the public.
Okay.
Who's not here. So
Okay.
we recommend waiving the first reading, just reading the title of it, and
Okay.
then bringing it back for consideration.
So the action that we're being asked to make is not adopting this ordinance, or this is just the first time we're seeing it, and we'll be asked to adopt it at a later date?
That's exactly correct. You're not adopting this ordinance. You are waiving the first reading of it and bringing it back for potential adoption at the next meeting.
So what's the appropriate motion regarding this one at this time?
It's to approve the item as agendized, which is
Okay.
to waive the first reading of the item and bring it back.
All right. Thanks.
Unless you guys want me to read it.
No.
I'd be more than happy to.
No, thanks for clarifying that, Crystal and Joe. I'm prepared at this point. If there's no other questions, to move to approve the item as prepared.
Okay, so we'll take that as a motion by Director Trezor,
Second.
seconded by Director Cox to approve item 2 on our consent agenda. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, roll call please.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
President Wilkins,
Yes.
motion approved.
Excellent. Next on our agenda is a public hearing to receive public comment and protest concerning proposed sewer rates for 2024 through 2028. This one
This
yours,
is mine
Crystal?
as well. So, does he have to open the public hearing officially?
I think it's appropriate to open the public hearing at this time, even without the public hearing.
Yeah, so the public hearing is open. So you want to open the public hearing before we get a staff presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So you want to open it and close it before the staff presentation?
No, it should be closed at the end of the staff presentation.
Okay, so we'll open the public hearing and invite staff to present.
So is it open?
What?
It's okay. Okay, I'm good to go. Okay, so this is the public hearing for the sewer rate, Prop 218 proposed sewer rate increases for year 2024 through 2028. Just a quick summary, for the past year, we hired HDR Engineering to do sewer rate study for us. We've had several meetings with the finance committee. We've had several meetings with the board, in the board meetings. And the background is that the last time that we did a Prop 218 was in 2006 with ordinance number 1-2006. And we sent out the Prop 218 notice back on March 31st. We've conducted the study for the past year, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sean. Sean Korn from HDR Engineering.
Good morning, good to be with you all. And this morning I just have a real brief update on the rate study, all information that we've been talking about for the last several months as we've been going through this process. So I'll talk through the purpose of the study, the overview, and then the recommendations. So on the next slide, we have really our primary purpose of the study, and as you all know, it's developing a financial plan or revenue requirement to meet the operating and capital needs of the agency. And then we also developed a cost of service analysis to meet the proportionality requirements. As we'll talk a little bit later, that's really on an ERU basis as we go through that process. And while we develop this, we want to check a couple key prudent financial criteria, such as maintaining target debt service coverage ratios, adequate rate funding of capital, and then minimum reserve levels as we go forward. So we developed the study based on your specific customer and system characteristics and industry standard approaches. So on the next slide, we'll kick off with our revenue overview of the study. And so going to the next slide, We have our three-step process. Remember, this is key to meeting the requirements of establishing cost-based and proportional rates. So we develop the revenue requirement or the financial plan. We do the proportional distribution of that revenue requirement in the cost of service analysis. And then based on the results of those two analyses, so the overall revenue needs of the agency and how that is translated to an equivalent unit charge, we can develop the proposed rates for the next 5-year period. So going through the study results on the next slide, this is a summary of our capital plan. Remember, this is a key driver of the study. Given the master plan project, staff has gone through this, evaluated the timing, the need, the cost of these different projects. And so you can see that ramp up out over the next 4 to 5 years as we meet the requirements of that capital plan with some of the major improvements here at the wastewater treatment plant to meet regulatory and standards that you need to meet at the current time. That's funded through a mix of rates, existing reserves, and long-term borrowing. Again, this is just the Fund 6, so the user charge, the rates that we're talking about today. As you get into the out years, you can see that levelizes out. For Fund 6, we have that annual roughly $5 million. That's all funded through rates, and that's part of this transition of this study is to get rates at a level where you can reinvest in the system on an annual basis. So given that capital plan, that rate-funded capital component, so in the out years, the $5 million, the blue piece, then we add that to our annual O&M expenses. And then you can see our O&M plus our capital plus our debt plus any reserve funding to meet our minimum requirements, how that compares to the dashed line that is essentially horizontal prior to any proposed rate adjustments. We're currently only funding our annual O&M. So that is a key driver as we go out into the future, is not only funding our future capital, but you can see with inflationary assumptions that ultimately over time, then the current revenues, which includes our user fee revenue, our interest income, our property tax, all the revenue that you have here is exceeded by our total costs. So once we have that total revenue requirement, we can come back to our average customer bill. Again, just footnoted, this is kind of before any cost of service adjustments or rate structure, but we've maintained that. So these essentially reflect those proposed rates as we go forward. You can see that annual charge and then the annual customer bill component as we go forward. Sorry, annual change, not charge, I apologize. And then the annual customer bill per EDU. You can see that increase from $306 currently and how that increases over the next 5-year period to meet those requirements and the overall percentage change in those rates over time. And then below that in the gray component, we have the monthly change in the bill just so that you have an understanding of what that monthly change is overall. So given that, one thing that we've talked about during this process is rates not being updated in some time. And so this actually goes back to 2011 and what that a couple different inflationary indices are. And if you go to the far right, what you'll see is we're at about the same level of rates that we're proposing today. So had annual CPI adjustments been put in place, we'd be at what we're proposing today as part of that. So just something to keep in mind as we've all talked about, as you move forward, adjusting rates through a rate study process or outside of that based on a CPI or other index that you would tie that to. So once we know that, we have our cost of service. As I mentioned, that's charged on an EDU equivalent dwelling unit basis. Somewhat to what Crystal was talking about on that prior item, we look at each individual customer type and we assign them a set amount of equivalent units. So typical single family home is 1. A commercial business may be 1. It can be much more than 1 depending on what those wastewater flows are, how they utilize the system going forward. We looked at those assumptions. We're recommending maintaining those assumptions given they reflect industry standard approaches. And so we've calculated the cost of service on an EDU basis and then applied that to those proposed annual rates that have been developed in this study. So once we have the cost of service on the next slide, we have our rate design. As I mentioned, we've maintained that current rate structure, so developing that based on the results of the revenue requirement, so the overall system increase, as well as the cost of service, the rate per EDU as we develop that, to develop or to propose cost-based and proportional rates. One change to this is we've made a couple changes actually. One of those is some minor revisions to maintain consistency between the user service charges and the connection fee component, so what Crystal was talking about earlier, making sure we're matching up based on the changes we did in 2019, and then some of the changes we made as part of this rate study here. And then we also are proposing to eliminate the non-tax schedule. So there was that separate schedule for outside of the tax area. It was a higher rate as part of that. And so just to simplify, maintain consistency, we have a single rate structure now for all customer classes as part of that. So here's that schedule, and this references a little bit of what you were talking about before. On the left-hand side is the type of customer. So you've got your barber, beauty shop, you've got a commercial establishment, restaurant or bar, grocery, etc. Kind of fourth on the bottom is your residential unit. You've got the TTSA code, so A, B, D, F, Z. You've got the different ones. That's part of what we're matching up between the connection fee and this, and the interim is part of that. And then you have the units, or how those customers are being charged. So you can see for a beauty or barber shop, it's a number of service chairs. And then that is a point something of one EDU based on the number of chairs, based on those assumed flows and strength of those flows for a beauty or barber shop. And then the same for each of the different categories as we go down this list. So fairly similar to most of your agency's approach to establishing rates for the sewer collection side of this. And then you can see the current rate there as part of it, and then the proposed rate as we go out over the 5 years for each of those different categories. To try and come back to a comparison, you are a bit unique, that you are a regional treatment provider only, and then each of the agencies has their own collection system that brings that to the interceptor, and then here ultimately to the plant. And so you can see on the left the current TTSA rate, the proposed for year one, that's just the first year, and then where a handful of other agencies are. And so you can see they're kind of all over the board, right kind of in that middle. And again, the caveat to this is never apples to apples. Some of these folks have reinvested in their infrastructure or their treatment plant. Others are going through that process right now. I think Big Bear Lake is the lowest on here. They're going through a major improvement on their system, and they're going to be somewhere in the neighborhood. They just adopted rates a month ago now, I think it was, and so they are actually going to be closer up to where above you and kind of trending along where the agency is also as part of their process for that as they update and upgrade their treatment process. We did the same on the next slide with the monthly bill, so you can see how that compares. Same scale, essentially, just divided by 12, but again, to give you an idea of what that monthly overall bill is, as part of that coming up to about just over $35 there a month for that monthly wastewater treatment bill for the agency. And with that, I think I have my final slide is, take any questions or comments, or actually, I'll just turn it back over to the board.
Thanks. Any questions or comments from the board?
And I don't know that this is the right time. It's not really for Sean. It just has to do with the public protest we got. Are we going to, as part of this open session in the public hearing,
Yes.
discuss the protest votes, and is this the appropriate time to ask questions about those?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So, staff has shared with, and it's in the board packet also, the number of protest votes we received. Appears to be well below the 50% requirement. I was curious regarding those protest votes, if there were any of our larger commercial customers submitted protests, or were these all residential, just the nature of those protest votes?
The only commercial that I recall was a laundromat.
Okay.
Other than that, I didn't see very
Okay.
many. And so a majority of them were residential.
Okay, I know part of our concern, wanting to communicate was we understood the impact to the residential homeowner, but, there's some of the larger customers are the resorts and restaurants and all that, and was curious whether we had seen any protests come back from them, but it doesn't sound like we saw that. And then the follow-up was, and maybe a challenging question, we've got a numerical count. I'm just curious if, there was an opportunity, I think, for them to have comments, and if there was a overarching theme as to why people were protesting.
Most of them, I mean, there were mixed emotions. There were a lot of people who were on fixed incomes. A lot of people, their debates were that they were second homes. They only visited the area on, maybe 4 times a year, or they were smaller homes, wanted to be built on a square foot basis. Some people said, my trash is only picked up 5 times a year. So some people didn't understand.
Right.
It was a very mixed emotion, and even some said, it should be charged for tourism tax, not charged to the homeowner. So there was a lot of, I think, misunderstanding on what it is that we were trying to do. But then there were a lot who did understand and didn't think we should be charging at the rates we were. So a lot of mixed emotion.
May I add to that? I received a few phone calls, and some of them were a lot of the same things that Rochelle was talking about, but a lot of them also thought that the sewer charge they were getting from the member districts, they were confusing the two, so they didn't know there was a difference. I had a lengthy conversation with a lady and explained it all to her, and probably spent 30 minutes on the phone with her, and she was super grateful, but in the same situation of a fixed income and second home type thing. So we did have that other nuance there where they were confusing what we were charging versus what the member districts charge.
Okay, any other questions?
I got a comment. Rochelle, this present slide that you've got on the screen,
Yes.
could you include that in my board report for Olympic Valley Public Service District, as well as the slide before that, please?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's the one. Thank you.
If you could share that with me as well, that'd be great.
Sure.
And although there's no public hearing, it's probably appropriate to close the public hearing at some point, and we can make those numbers final.
Did we receive any additional today? Because I knew of a couple people that were going to drop some off today.
No, we did not. And these are effective as of the mail yesterday that we picked up. Our mail is not sorted until after 9 o'clock. And so, of course, there was no mail to pick up prior to the board meeting.
Okay, Blake?
I think the last question, just procedure-wise, assuming we adopt this rate change, it goes into effect July 1, it'll go out on the tax roll to those customers that are charged on the tax roll, and then direct bill to the remaining ones. We've already done the notification process through 218, so there's no additional outreach to our customers regarding the rate change at this time.
Not that it's legally required.
Okay, that's correct. We've done a big outreach. And then I think I asked this previously, this is a 5-year plan we have with maximum rate increases. And so on an annual basis, I would assume sometime, early enough before the July 1 tax roll period, we'll revisit this, and the board will have to take some type of formal action to adjust rates for each subsequent year. And what kind of notification process would property owners be required to receive, or is there any requirement for us to notify them of subsequent rate changes?
So because the Prop 218 notice included all of the 5 years, the proposed ordinance before you today would actually adopt the rates as proposed in the notice for all 5 years. That said, the board is welcome to revisit the rates at any time. So if you'd like a standing item to come up, or for other needs in future years to revisit the rates before they go on the tax roll, the board is able to do that. But there is no legal requirement to do so. There's no legal requirement to send notice as to these 5 years or to do any other Prop 218 process, because it's all been included in the notice that you just went through in the process.
Okay. I don't think we take any action on that at this point, but something for us to be aware of.
Yeah, I know at the Tahoe City PUD, every year when we go through our budget process, we take a look at our Prop 218 notice that we had most recently, or Prop 218 action we had most recently completed, compare what our revenue stream is as compared to what we were assuming at the time the Prop 218 was done, and then either set the rates at the approved Prop 218 level, or occasionally we've set them a little bit lower where our revenue stream or expense, either revenues were higher or expenses were lower, so we were able to meet our revenue target without increasing rates quite as much. So if that's something we wanted to do every year as part of the budget process, that would probably be the appropriate time.
Yeah, and maybe as part of the finance committee, it's something we would discuss as we roll around to the next year, sort of March, April timeframe.
Yeah. And specifically what we did, and just because we do it this way at the Taos City PUD doesn't mean PPSA needs to, but what we had done there is identify a target amount of revenue. We wanted to cover our operating costs with rates, and then there was a target amount of revenue that we wanted to generate each year to go to capital expenses. And if we were meeting or exceeding that capital, that amount of money we were trying to generate for future capital, that was when we would consider potentially reducing the rates slightly so that the revenue matched what that revenue target assumption was as opposed to exceeding it. So anyway.
Did I hear we did close the public hearing?
We haven't yet, but we can soon. So if there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. I think based on protests that have been received, the majority protest threshold has not been met. So I guess we just want to capture that for the record. And there's no action related to item 1 on our agenda. So I think if there's no further discussion from the board, our next item would be to item 2 on the agenda, which would be consideration of approving ordinance 1-2023, adopting the sewer rates for 2024 through 2028. So with that, I think we just covered the bulk of the background technical information related to this. If there's any further board conversation, we could pursue that, or if anyone wants to make a motion.
I'll move.
Okay.
I'll second.
So we got a motion by Director Trezin to approve ordinance 1-2023 and a second by Director Wilson. Is there any further board discussion on this? Seeing none, roll call please.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. All right, that's a lot of work. Thanks everyone for all of your efforts on that. It's a big deal. All right, next on the agenda is approval of cost of living adjustment and salary schedule for fiscal year 23-24.
Good morning again, President Wilkins and board. And as part of Resolution 12-2019, the board approved an annual cost of living adjustment to be applied to Group B within the salary schedule. The COLA is applied based on the California Consumer Price Index, or CPI, all urban consumers using the annual February data. Any approved COLA adjustments are applied at the beginning of the first full pay period of the fiscal year, which this year is July 2nd. Resolution 12-2019 allows the agency to calculate the COLA based on a formula applied to the CPI, and using that formula, the requested COLA is 4.8%. Employees within Group A of the salary schedule will automatically move into Group B when the maximum Group B salary exceeds the maximum Group A salary. And in this case, this year, if this is approved, that will affect 2 job classifications, which are Operator 3 and Mechanic 3 within Group A. And management and staff recommend the approval of the 4.8% COLA and the updated salary schedule.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board on this item?
Vicki, it looks like there's still 5 positions that still are in the Group A and the Y-rated. How many total employees in those 5 different categories?
Let's see, I'm just gonna do a quick calculation. 6 employees total.
I mean, it's an interesting formula we have. Yeah, I think it's something that's been, I know it was codified back in 2019, but I think it's been around. I'm looking at Mike because you've got the longest history here, that this kind of formula for annual COLA has been
Since I
as long as-
started 28 years ago.
even back when you came on,
Yes.
this was the exact same formula.
Yes.
So I can't even ask you for the rationale behind it. It was something that even predated you. Okay.
Yes.
It's interesting, every agency has its own, some of them have different formulas, some of them are negotiated with their unions. Our agency doesn't have any formula, the board just reviews the data and makes a discretionary decision. Just curious if you knew the background, and I don't think anybody else here has more history than you to go back there, so this one seems to fall within the lines of, the bounds of most of the other agencies, so. Okay, thanks, Mike.
Cool. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion?
Also moved.
Moved by Director Smeltzer to approve the cost of living adjustment for 23-24, as well as the salary schedule. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Director Trezin. If there's no further discussion by the board, Rochelle, if you could do roll call.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is discussion and review of the 23-24 budget highlights.
Good morning again. Do you have the presentation?
Where did you put it?
The presentation?
Where did you put it?
I emailed it last night.
I remember I told you to put it in the file.
I thought you meant the highlights only. Sorry, you guys all have the presentation, but Director Cox does not. I can take a minute to go save it if you guys allow me to, for her to access it.
Hang on.
I have a kind of, I don't have the PowerPoint.
I have a PowerPoint as well.
Hold on. Get that one out.
I'm sorry, Rochelle, I thought you wanted just the highlights.
I do have it.
Okay. Okay, so good morning. I put together a budget highlights for the Finance Committee on May, was it 9th, when we had the Finance Committee meeting. We had some questions and changes and feedback. Just a caveat, this is a draft form of the budget highlights. Just want to bring it to you guys in advance before I bring it to the board and the public in June for final adoption. What you have right here, the handout that you guys have, is just some assumptions that I'll walk through as I'm talking through on the slides. Can you hear me okay, Director Cox?
Say again?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Perfect. Go ahead, next slide, Rochelle. Thank you. So I'm going to go over the revenue highlights, consolidated expenditure, CIP projects, and then we'll end with questions. Next slide. Before we get into...
May I ask, Rochelle, can you email that to the board?
Yeah.
This presentation, please.
I didn't have enough time to turn around and get in the packet, so I apologize for that. So this first slide is the all agency consolidated revenue. I will talk about assumptions for that on the next few slides. But in general, we're projecting fiscal 23 total revenue to be about $20.4 million. and then the fiscal 24 budget to be about 23.8 million, and that does include the increase for the sewer rate fees. Next slide, when you can. Okay, so first we'll talk about the general fund revenue. Some of the assumptions here for the projected actuals, we went to accrual based on sewer service charge revenues. We went to an accrual basis this year on the sewer service charge revenues of what we billed on the tax roll and what we knew the direct bill was in advance. So per the April financials, we had about a little over 10 million. So then I annualized that and I added the direct bills that we're still expecting to come up with 13.9 projected actuals for sewer service charges for fiscal 23. Then we actually, Celeste actually did prepare the tax roll because we'll be bringing that to the board next month. So we do have an amount for sewer service charges and direct bills for the tax roll, which will include the 30% with with pretty much minimal growth there. But that's coming out to 17 million, and that is a conservative number. Then the ad valorem, we are projecting 4.5 million to come in. We just received our May numbers, and that's also a conservative number. It might be a little more than that, but we're not expecting much more than that. And then we did a 3% growth because that is starting to slow down of 4.6 million in fiscal 24. On the fund interest, the projected actuals we had in our current financials, we had 3 months worth, so I just annualized that because there's no way to predict which way that interest rate is going to go for LAIF. I reduced the budget for the LAIF fund interest because we have quite a few things in the works, and I have no way to know exactly how that's going to work out. We're looking at moving a good majority of our money from LAIF to CalClass, and LAIF is now at a little over 2%. I think CalClass is around a 4%. So that is a conservative estimate on what I'm expecting in 24. I am expecting the rates to go down. I have no idea how much they're going to go down. On the U.S. Treasury interest, we aren't going to receive any interest in this fiscal year. And this is the $5 million that we invested in U.S. Treasuries with Stephen Gortler. The $129,000 is just the estimated number that he had provided us of what we should earn minus fees for. This is a 6-month and a 9-month maturity. One's going to mature in September. The other one's going to mature in December. And then other revenue, I just did we're projected at 71,000, and that can fluctuate any direction. And then just did a slight increase on that. And we never changed temp discharges. So, and right now our projected actual is 25,000. So on and I already talked about all the assumptions for the income for the general fund. Do you have questions?
So the vast majority of our revenue comes from the sewer charges. Then the next big chunk is the property taxes. On the service charges, I should know this, we just adopted the ordinance to change those. That first year, I think, was somewhere in the order of like 35%
30.
Increase. Was it 30?
It's 30%.
Just 30, okay. And so we're projecting only a 22% increase. All the same customers that we had this year, we're going to have next year. Yet we know we've increased it 30% for all of them, plus there'll be some percentage of new customers as well. So
and lost customers. So this number, the 17 million, we will take when we do our next pass, we'll take it our projected actuals. But the 17 million is actually Celeste actually did run everything through the system, and this is what she will be billing on the tax roll with the new rates. So the estimate, the fiscal 23 estimate is, we'll know more as we get through the end of May when we do that final pass. But right now, that's what it's looking like.
And as
But
part
we
of-
have delinquent, we also have to account for the delinquent charges that we're collecting. But the 17 million is the number as of this very moment in time that she actually ran through the system that we're gonna turn into the counties.
So that doesn't include the 30%
It
increase
does.
on the direct bills as well?
It does on everything.
Okay. And is it possibly less than 30% because there's a certain portion of those customers that aren't seeing a 30% increase because they were the non-tax customers that were already a little bit higher than the tax customers?
That's
and so,
actually a very good assumption right there. And I will make sure I get that in the next budget presentation.
Seems like, we're being conservative, which is good. We shouldn't overestimate our revenue, but, the ones where we've got when we know what it is, to be as accurate as we can as well, as precise. So,
And the thing here is that the 13.9 is still just an estimate based off of what we're expecting in May,
Right.
and also the direct bills we're expecting to receive. That number we'll have a better idea of that number when we present the final budget.
thank you.
Any other questions on the general fund revenue? Director Cox?
No questions. Did a good job, Crystal. Thank you.
Thank you. A real quick note on all the fund interest for LAIF. I annualized the projected actuals. I don't want to repeat that every time. And then I kept within like an 80% range for the budget of what the current actuals are. And if I'm right, then I probably need to go into a different field. So on the next slide, the wastewater capital reserve fund, this is our restricted funds, our connection fees, and I'm expecting this to change. I just don't have enough data, and I won't until May, but our connection fees are very low right now as compared to prior years, and I don't know if it's because of the economy. I'm guessing there's a lot of effect there from the massive amount of snow that we've had. I don't know how much of an increase we're going to see in the next 2 months before fiscal 23 is over. I'm gonna make a safe assumption. I think that there's probably going to be a lot of construction between now and the end of June. But right now I went with a conservative number of 1.2 million for projected actuals, and then 1.2 million. I only went up 0.5%. Generally, I think I was going up 4%, I don't remember. I have to look at last year. But our increase in EDUs has slowed down significantly over the past 3 years. So that is the assumptions for the sewer connection fee revenue. The interest on the CDs, this is the 100,000 is an estimate that was given to us by the investor, Time Value Investments, Aaron Bonk. And that is just for the 1-year CDs. So we'll have CDs mature within the next year. Some of those are monthly interest, some are quarterly. Michelle is working on a spreadsheet to keep track of all that. So we'll have more data on that as the fiscal 24 progresses. And then the same with the fund interest. Any questions on the wastewater?
On the sewer connection fee, we projected in 22 that 2023 would be 2.1 million.
Mm-hmm.
We're currently projected at 1.2, and basically it's going to be flat. 0.5% is the projection.
Right now, I'm hoping to have better data in May when we close the May financials, but right now on our April financials, our sewer connection fees, I think we're $983,000,
Okay.
which is low. And in the I've only been here for 2 years, but in the 2 years in the audit, we were up in the 2 million range.
Mm-hmm.
But it is definitely lower right now than it has been this time.
Okay.
So, because it looked like the $2 million projected was based on a 1% increase in our total number of EDUs on an annual basis. And I think that might have come from possibly us, TSD, because that's what we see, but I know our district, Truckey's growing a lot faster than the other member agency districts. And so you're actually seeing, it looks like closer to a 0.5% increase overall in the number of EDUs, which is probably good. And, so that projection next year is again for another 0.5% overall increase in the EDUs. It's like 240 total residential equivalent units being attached to the district. And Rochelle, you guys provide kind of how many EDUs the district totally has. I think we have like 42,000 total.
Yeah,
so that's about a 0.5%. So it just kind of gives us a feeling for the growth in the district.
Yeah. So actually, year to date, over the past, I flip my page. I looked at the past 3 years, like we discussed in the finance committee meeting. It was a 0.08 increase year to date, year over year, current year. A 0.5 increase of EDUs year to date for the prior year, and 1% for the year before that. So it's dropped from 1% to 5% to 0.08%. I went with the middle.
And it's hard crystal ball. We don't know what the development community's got out there. Someone comes in with a large housing development or apartment complex, and it could exceed that. But that sounds like seems like the economy's a little bit slower, and so that sounds like a good projection.
I mean, I hope it's wrong.
Some would hope it's right.
Yeah.
It's less new housing starts.
Any other questions on Fund 2 restricted funds? Director Cox?
No questions, thank you.
So the next slide, I just put it up here, Fund 6 and Fund 7. Fund 6 is our rehabilitation fund, one of our big capital project funds. But the only income there is the fund interest, probably soon to be CalClass interest, and the same with Fund 7, which is our emergency fund. Some of the conversations on the emergency fund, that just a side note that we've been having, is we keep that at $4 million. Currently working on target fund balance analysis with Penn Diekler to address, if that's an appropriate target fund balance for actually all of the funds. Any questions on Fund 6 and 7? Okay, the next slide is the general fund expenditure. This is, I chose to do this by type of expenditure versus by department. So overall, we're projecting a $16.4 million actuals, and then for fiscal 24, we're expecting an $18.4 million for budget. I'll just walk through some quick points and then open it up for questions. So the salaries and wages in the fiscal 23 projected actuals, the reason why it is higher than the 24 budget is because we were paying 2 GM salaries for the year. And then for the budget, we included the 4.8%. The assumption we made was we included the 4.8% COLA. We did some estimates on overtime and the, what's the once a year thing called again? I forget. The COLA? Not the COLA, the people who are maxed out. The merit, thank you. Their merit increases, we estimate that to be a 3% for those that would be eligible for that. The other thing that we did differently this year for the budget for salaries and wages is we budgeted everything at the highest step for all positions, just to keep it simple across the board instead of trying to go through all the detail of trying to figure out what everybody's going to end up at, because that actually is a very time-consuming process and not always very accurate. So on the employee benefits, the reason why that the fiscal 23 projected actuals is so much lower than the budget is because we received that $450,000 reimbursement for OPEB retirement. for the retiree health insurance. That is included in the actuals because we received it in July. Right now for the budget, we are not including that. We are still working with total compensation. Just for your guys' information, met with them yesterday or the day before, and we had a $2 million loss in our OPEB trust. We are still 100% funded. And it is a roll forward valuation, not a full valuation. So I, right now, I'm conservatively not accounting to get a reimbursement in fiscal 24. And that will know more down the road. Most likely I'm not going to ask for reimbursement, but I will bring that to the finance committee so that we can talk through that and see if we want to ask for reimbursement there. And just for everybody's benefit, we are allowed to ask for reimbursements for premiums that we've paid in for the current year, but we have to do it by July of the next year, up to the amount of the premiums we pay. And our premiums right now are about $650,000 to $700,000. We have lost a couple people. A couple people have dropped off on the retirement insurance. So the other thing that the fiscal 24 budget includes for employee benefits is the increases to PEPRA Classic, retirement health insurance, and retiree health insurance for 6 months. So, because those increase on calendar year, so for January to June, we have included those increases, and I meant to print out the percentages, and I did not print those off. So I don't know them off the top of my head. Sorry about that.
Crystal, can you remind me, with the employee, with the health insurance during retirement, once an employee becomes eligible for Medicare, what changes at that point?
I actually do not know the answer to that question. I would have to come back to you unless Vicki or Michael might know. But I would need to talk to Don or Michelle. I don't know the answer.
Because I think prior to Medicare, we're pretty much paying the full amount as we would be with any other employee. But then once Medicare kicks in, I know we talked through this, but
my understanding is it becomes supplemental, but I don't know what the costs are to it.
Yeah, it becomes a different rate because Medicare becomes, it depends on whether it's the employee that becomes Medicare eligible or their dependents. But then, yes, the rate does change based on them having Medicare also. It becomes a lower rate.
Okay, thanks.
I'll get that exact information for the presentation in June too, as a follow-up, so that you guys have that.
Thanks.
Because I don't know off the top of my head.
And the budget currently assumes, with regards to existing employees and their retirees, continuation on the PERS Platinum plan, and then a certain percentage increase in the cost of that Platinum plan.
So how we did the budget is we took the current year or the current month rate for the retirees per the invoice we received, and finished that out to get the rest of the actuals for 23 for the premiums, and then we took the first 6 months based off of that, because I never know when somebody's going to be added to the retiree insurance or taken off of it, and then the next 6 months we took that rate by 9%.
So
Almost 9%.
Your assumption was a 9% increase in our health insurance costs. I'm looking at Vicki or
Something like that.
And you're talking about retirees, but is our retiree cost for health insurance for retirees, does that exceed the cost of health insurance for existing employees?
I don't know the answer to that question. I would need to look that up. So, because the way we look at our retiree premiums is it's broken out by department, and each person has a different rate depending on what they've selected. So we didn't dig into the details of who has platinum, or with us who has gold versus platinum. We just looked at the premiums, the current
And you
premiums.
assumed a 9% increase happening
On the retiree insurance, yes.
And for the existing employees.
I have to get back to you on that one. I apologize. I don't remember that number off the top of my head. But I will add that information to the assumptions for the budget that we do in June.
the other, maybe you're getting ready to go there, tell me if I'm jumping ahead of you, is the pension side of the employee benefit costs.
The PEPRA and the classic retirement. We just did. I don't have the rates on that, but I do know that we adjusted for them because I'm kind of seeing in my head right now in our file. We did the 6 months and the 6 months on that as well. What one was like 14? I think the current one's 14. I'm talking classic, and then it bumped up to 15. I have those. I have those rates. I just don't have them on me.
They've been, because with regard to pension, I know the PERS gives us a valuation that tells you what the next fiscal year contributions the agency's going to make. So those were incorporated into our.
You're talking about the OPEB pension.
Not OPEB. I'm talking about pension. The retiree. You know, they do that evaluation and they say what the normal costs are going to be, what kind of required UAL you have to pay, you know, for both classic and PEPRA employees.
So for PERS, we don't have that information yet, but yes, they will give us that information for what, because we'll get an invoice for our UAL, and then for the OPEB, we're fully funded, so we're just paying premiums.
I think we should have the pension contributions. The number of employees is a variable, but the rate for a classic or a PEPRA employee.
Okay. I have not seen it. It generally goes to Michelle's group, so I will have to follow up on that, but I have not seen it.
So it'd be good to share, I think, so we know what those costs, what they're escalating at and stuff.
And when I do the full presentation and the full report, all that information will be in there.
I know health insurance is tricky because that rate changes at the calendar year, and they don't. CalPERS doesn't give us the premiums for 24 until after most of us have done our budget. So you have to kind of do the crystal ball, but that should be coming out pretty soon. I don't know if there's been any circulars. I haven't heard any whisperings of the changes in the PERS gold or platinum rates.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So what I'm wondering, because these are all good questions, for this summary table, we've got salaries and wages, which is fairly straightforward, but then employee benefits, does that include the pension contributions as well as health care contributions, as well as retiree health care contributions?
That is correct.
So it would be helpful from my perspective if we could break those out into three separate, have an employee benefits total, but then have the other three lines that show how much of it's retiree health care, how much of it's current employee health care, and how much of it is
And we will
pension.
have that. We will have that when I do the full budget presentation. This is just a draft with the highlights. But it's like
understood.
a packet, and we'll have.
What I'm suggesting is for this summary table, add those three lines.
Right, and I can add that, and then it'll also be very detailed in the budget as well. So line by line by line by department.
It might be too detailed in the budget. Is my
Yeah. I can add the summary of the employee benefits, but are you wanting all of the employee benefits or just the high stuff, the insurance stuff and the retirement stuff? Because there's probably about 15 accounts that go into this.
So let's talk about that. So from my perspective, the pension is a major line item, and then healthcare, which would include health, dental, and vision, and then maybe there's another category which is just other.
Probably the retiree health.
Oh yeah, retiree healthcare. Thanks.
Yeah, and if there's something else that's really big, I'll add that. If it's kind of in line with the amounts of those ones.
Right, and my comment about it maybe being too detailed in the budget is, sometimes it gets so disaggregated that you lose track of it versus pulling that out kind of at a high level in the summary table.
Yeah, and I don't mind doing that at all.
Yeah.
And if there's any of the other expenses you would like for me to do a breakout of, I don't mind doing that.
So am I hearing you want the three and then a fourth that would be other?
Yeah, so my thought is, and maybe there's a separate table that just lays out employee benefits. I think Crystal said there's like 15 different types of benefits.
Right.
I think my suspicion is that retiree health care is a major item, that PERS contributions are a major item, that current employee health care, which includes medical insurance, but also dental and vision, is probably a major item, and I'm guessing there's a series of other things that are probably more minor in nature.
Yeah.
Well, we have the HRA
And I could do a pop out of that. Like I can have this table and
I
then.
mean, I guess we could do a sub-table that just details every single benefit, every single line item too.
It'd be good to let you, I think Dan's request is good. I don't know if we can hash it out. Maybe we could
Yeah.
bring it to the finance committee and we can provide some
I'll go off with that, and then
input as well.
when we meet on the 30th, I'll share an updated, and then we can.
Perfect.
And I don't even mind sending it to you, to anybody ahead of time for the finance committee. Because the finance committee, at the end of this presentation, we are having a special finance committee on the 30th to go over the full budget.
Yeah, so my suggestion would be if the summary table could be included in the staff report.
Oh, the staff report?
Yeah, when it comes back. 'Cause I'm assuming we're looking at a June budget adoption.
Yeah, I don't usually include the tables in the staff report because they're so big, but I can put it in the presentation.
What I'm suggesting is the summary table be included in the staff report,
Okay.
so that in the staff report, we can get some summary level budget information that's kind of top line type information.
I can do that.
Yeah.
I'll do that with revenue and expenses.
And then I would assume there would be an attachment to the staff report that would be the full budget.
And a PowerPoint.
Right.
I'll do a presentation like I did last year.
Right.
A bigger presentation than the highlights.
Right.
But it still will be short, I promise.
Right. No, it's just budgets tend to be, thick documents with lots of detail, and sometimes it can be hard to glean out the kind of the big picture out of all the detail, and summary tables help with that.
And I generally put some summaries within the big budget, and those are the high level things, and I can pull those high level things from my summaries into the staff report.
Right. But this table right here, I like this, summarized at this level, and then again, maybe another table that drills in on the employee benefits.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other?
Are you-
I still have to finish going through, yes.
Okay.
So on the professional services, I picked for my general fund topics, expenditure topics, some things that are higher than normal. Professional services, we're expecting to have roughly $421,000 in projected actuals. We're bumping up to $673,000 in fiscal 24 budget. The two key drivers of that are not our usual professional services is engineering is budgeting $175,000 for on-call services and the remaining unbilled pre-treatment review. And then we have the $77,500 for the human resources study, which accounts for the big changes. The rest of the items were pretty normal year over year. Then the next one is conferences and training. We're projecting $41,000. Again, I think this is a very low conservative number because I know that there's some trainings going on in May and June. I do not have all the details on the cost of those. But for fiscal 24 budget, we're projecting $196,000. And one of the biggies for that is the supervisor manager training budgeted at $70,000. The next one that was kind of higher than normal is the supplies, repairs, and maintenance. We're budgeting it at projecting it to be $877,000 for projected $1.4 almost 1.5 million, so 1,452,000 for budget. We have 5 main drivers here that are above the normal, what we normally do. We've got 15,000 for filtration mechanical, 35,000 for filtration miscellaneous, and this is above the normal. 93,000 for facility tools. We have 110,000 carryover for TRI mechanical, and we have 694,000 for warehouse stock. And I do not have the details. I did not pull the details together for the warehouse stock. So, any questions? Did I answer your questions?
On the contractual services, which outside of the benefits and the salaries and wages is the single largest line item up there, we don't see a big year-on-year increase, but I know that we just approved the chem pricing for fiscal year 24. I assume that those chemicals are part of contractual services.
They are.
And that's looked like it was close to $1 million just in chemical. The other, $1.5 million, is that the hauling of the sludge to the biosolids and stuff? I'm trying to. There's probably some.
That's a portion of it.
And I don't know that you know offhand, what the big ticket items in those contractual services are outside of chemical purchases, hauling, power.
Electricity.
There's a utilities
No.
line item that's
No.
separate. That's okay.
No. Other than the chemicals and the hauling for operations, that's.
Those are the big contractual services.
And I can do a summary of that as well, because that's all departments, not just operations. There's various things in there.
Okay.
And I can do another high-level summary of that,
That'd
like
be
I'm
great.
doing with benefits.
Yeah.
I just grabbed the stuff that was unusual.
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to be at 1.2 for chemicals, is what we predict.
Right.
24.
Sodium hypochlorite has increased the chemical cost, but we're all on board with that.
What would be an example of the warehouse stock? I mean, that's the biggest number on this section.
Paul,
So-
well, that.
So a lot of that can be attributed to some of the changes that we're making in the warehouse and our methodologies in bringing in parts and accounting for those parts. In the past, a lot of the parts were brought in and assigned at that time to whatever part of the plant they were purchased or might be used in. We're changing that methodology, and we're working with Crystal to revise that so that they're brought into the warehouse, and at the time of use, they're checked out and attributed to the part of the plant at that time. So it's kind of
So this is showing the value of an inventory that might include pumps,
absolutely.
electrical equipment. I think, was that your
Pumps,
question,
Yeah,
Scott?
yeah.
What, I think Scott's question
Yes.
is what type of things are we talking about that would be an inventory?
Yeah, pumps, motors, valves. There could be anything from cable, wiring to fasteners, fittings, pipe, anything that we need to have on hand for redundancy or to repair things on short notice. Absolutely.
So the methodology to get to that number is based on previous years, those parts and equipment being, what's the word I want to use? Put under a different department?
So right now, we do not charge it to the various departments, but that's where we're trying to get to when they use it.
So I know we did this at our agency. We used to buy a lot of stuff, but it was kind of capitalized until it was actually used, and then you expensed it. And
We're not there.
We're moving, and then we decided that was a lot of juggling of stuff. And we just now, when we buy stuff, we just expense it right then. We don't wait until it's used.
Right
because
now,
it
we are doing
becomes
that.
an accounting nightmare to kind of track all that stuff over time. And so the big increase, are you expensing a bunch of stuff that's been sitting in inventory?
We don't have
already?
anything in inventory in the warehouse. It has all been expensed since
Okay.
the dawn of time here, I believe.
Okay.
One of the things that we're working towards with a joint effort with my staff, Paul's team, and the auditors is because it's such a large amount, and it's old, so we don't have to worry about that going forward. But once they get their costing system in and we get to a point where we can handle it on the accounting system, we will need to start recording inventory based on what the dollar amount is, because we do have a big warehouse. So we may not get away with expensing it, but right now, because we're working on getting the costing and everything with the auditors and stuff, that's how we're handling it still.
Yeah,
But,
I think
right.
I think it's an audit issue, isn't it? Just the auditors come in, they're like, hey, what's all this stuff and where does it show
They
up?
do.
in your-
It is because there's a lot of that's how there's a lot of companies where that's how they have found fraud, because things were hidden in the warehouses. But our auditors walked the warehouse this time, got a good feel of it, and so that is the joint project effort, and it's probably a 2 to 3 year project. But the auditors are working with us on that. To answer your question, right now, when they use an item, we don't charge that to the department. So basically, what you see is you have $600,000 in warehouse expense charged to Department 11 and Paul's department. Let's say $50,000 of that a pump was used for a project or a different department. We would move that expense from the warehouse to that respective project or department. So it's not, we're still having this expense, it's just going to be charged correctly to the right project or department.
Oh, okay, that's clear. The numbers on that particular line for me, we projected it was going to be 1.14 million in 2022. Reality, it looks like it's going to be 880,000, so there's a delta there of what?
And that's not just the warehouse stock. So there's
I guess where I'm having trouble is if you look in fiscal year 24 on that line, it's 1.45. That's a big leap from the 8778.
yes, and the majority of that is for the warehouse. That leap, the majority of the leap for that is
that we're
for
bringing
warehouse.
in,
Yes.
not that we currently have.
Correct.
So it's not
Okay.
just an accounting thing, it's actually, you guys have plans to
Yeah.
stockpile or acquire a lot of parts in fiscal year 24.
To some degree, yes, but a lot of it does really attribute to actually accounting for it and knowing we've got the value of the parts that we've got that we're bringing in. So as we start transitioning over to this, you're going to start seeing those expenses go up in the warehouse cost. It won't just be a so-called direct charge to an individual account. Without more detail, it's difficult to explain. I can work, if you want more detail, I can work with Crystal to provide that detail.
And we have the detailed information because the departments have already put the work together and given me explanations. I'm just doing the high-level points, highlights of what the big changes are. So that is another item. When we get to the full budget, we'll have the details in there. I will put more details in the presentation, and of course the details you guys have requested for in the staff report. But right now, for the budget highlights, I just did the biggest drivers. So this supplies, repairs, and maintenance is not just the warehouse stock, but the warehouse stock is the one that had the significant increase for what they're buying. So pumps, parts, all the things.
I would like to see the details of that.
And I can do that.
There are some things that are attributable on that 877 going up to the 1.4. This last year, we had intended to do a lot more with our last year's budget that we didn't get to this year. Between weather and different challenges that we had with staffing concerns and people out doing snow removal and whatnot, or sometimes just being able to get to it. It's been a challenging year, so we hope to get back to that and add additional projects to the year, so that number has increased significantly along with the warehouse changes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That works for me.
Did you guys want me to break out any more of the other areas? And just remember, this is the first pass. We're not finished. We have still a bunch of internal review to do. One more pass, one more month of information to be able to see, where our actuals are going to come in at.
Do you have any more in your presentation, Crystal?
I have the CIP, Fund 2 and Fund 6,
Yeah.
Just, you guys have seen this many times, I just want to go over some of the assumptions.
Yeah.
So for the, just in general, high level, some of this is duplicate information. We used we have our restricted Fund 2 capital expenditures and our unrestricted Fund 6 capital expenditures. Some of these projects are split between the two based off of our capacity 12% calculation and other capacity information provided by engineering. Overall, we took the master sewer plan and the IT skating master plan, and we worked with Sean Korn during the rate study to get appropriate inflationary increases. And the management team and the supervisor team and the general manager team, we have been scrubbing these numbers for almost a year now, with the priority of the projects, accounting for the cost and timing. We have a couple more meetings that we're going to be doing before the final. So for the budget, we only present the 5 years. This information is directly, with some tweaks to it from internal tweaks, directly from the sewer rate study projects. For the first 2 years, for 24 and 25, we have a hyperinflation of 10%, and I don't know if that's the right word, but that's what I've been calling it. And then the normal inflation of 3.8% for 25, 27, and 28. It's just the 3.8%. And then the other factor in here is that we carried forward projects from 23 that we either started and didn't complete, or we did not start. So those were carried forward to 24's budget. See, I think I got everything. So just basically this information is being scrubbed by the general manager, the department managers, and the supervisors based on priorities. And if we carried forward something and we felt we needed to push out the budget for if it was a 5-year project and we carried forward the 23 year, sometimes we would push it out, and sometimes we knew we were going to be doing 23 and 24 together. So, and those are the assumptions for the CIP for both Fund 2 and Fund 6.
Thanks. Does that conclude your presentation?
It does.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I'll just say that, you're getting a lot of questions because you're providing information to us early in a format that I think we can kind of digest. And so I really appreciate the presentation and the preparation. And, you guys have made huge steps forward in the budget process. And it's good. It coincides well with the rate increase we did. I know that part of the final budget includes, not only revenues and expenditures, but then changes in fund balances, which is important to track in comparing them to our targets. And so I look forward to seeing that and working with you on the 30th.
Is there anything additional that you guys, I will have additional information in the presentation. It's definitely probably has more detail in it when I present the final, but other than the breakouts that you were talking about, is there anything additional you would like to see in the presentation? Because the draft budget is going to have everything.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, I think.
Director Cox?
I'm good.
I don't think there's any action for this.
All right.
Well, there's a lot of action for me. But.
All right. Thanks. Okay. Next on is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none. Move on. Next on the agenda is approval to award bid for the 2022 roof repair project.
Morning, Board of Directors. My name is Aaron Carlson, Senior Engineer. I'm currently filling in for Jay Parker. He's out today. For the 2023 roof repair project, it builds on the recent roof repair projects that have focused on rehabilitating the roofs. This project specifically focuses on building number 2, that being AWT, and this is on the upper and lower roof. If awarded by the board, field work is slated to occur between June 26th and September 15th. TTSA received one bid on April 20th from Centimark Corporation in the amount of $733,403.20. CentiMark was found to be the lowest responsive bidder. Review of the bid yielded several minor irregularities in how CentiMark completed the forms. These minor irregularities were clarified by CentiMark during the bid review. The total bid price is less than the engineer's estimate, which was and budgeted amount of $1.2 million for the project. In March, board meeting, approval was granted to shift $1.2 million from fiscal year 26 to 27 to fiscal year 23-24 to fund the work. Management and staff recommend that the board waive the minor bid irregularities and provide approval to award the bid for the 2023 roof repair project to CentiMark in the amount of $733,403.20 and approve a contract amount of up to $810,000, which takes into account a 10% contingency.
Great. Thanks, Ron. Any questions or comments from board members?
Just nice to see something come in below engineer's estimate. Don't see a lot of that these days.
Considerable.
Move to approve.
Yeah. Okay. There's no questions. There's no public comment. Anyone care to make a motion?
Dale did.
Dale made a
Oh,
motion.
I'm sorry, Dale.
And I'll second it.
So Dale made a motion.
Yep.
Blake made a second to approve the bid award of the 2022 roof repair project.
23.
Oh, 23. It says 22 on my agenda.
Yes.
Oh, does it?
With that, if you could do roll call, Rochelle?
Yes. Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved for the 2023 roof repair project.
Thank you. And next we're on to section 6 of our agenda, which would be department reports. And usually Mike goes first, but
Greg's gonna go in my place
so we'll do that.
for the operations department.
I made that edit for you.
You did. Okay. Thank you. Morning, board of directors. President Wilkins. I'm Greg O'Hara, Chief Plant Operator, and I will be filling in for Michael, who's filling in for Richard. So, I am happy to report all plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. The plant did perform well for the month of April. Sodium hypochlorite project for effluent disinfection continues to perform well. And then the WIMS software that we are utilizing is currently being utilized by all staff for the operations department, but there are some internal configurations that will be ongoing. All right, next slide. So for the laboratory summary, staff performed the necessary laboratory testing. Lab staff are in the process of implementing quality system improvements. The lab assessment is scheduled for May 31st. The LIMS implementation is nearing completion. And then the lab staff supported member districts for micro testing during the month. Next slide. So this is just an example of how the operators are getting data into the WIM system. Initially, in this example, the operators down in the lab getting process data. I believe it's pH right here, and he's writing it in on a sheet. We have eliminated all of our paper copies of everything, and then he'll go over to the computer on the next slide. And then there's so this is the WIM software right here. The picture on the left is it's a custom data entry form, and the operator will just enter all that data that he had previously written down.
So to help me follow this, so is this the part where it's the staff, is being utilized by the staff, and this is the configuration.
Yeah, so previously, before this month, we've gone into our process information system that we were utilizing, and now everything, the WIMS has been built. The operators are entering it into this system, and then it goes into the server, and then the next, just to the right of that picture, this is the data that it will spit out for you. With a couple clicks of a button, you can get what we call variables. And a variable is just a location, and then a test or a flow rate or something. And you can select that variable and then compare it against each other. And then it also, we are reporting, so the Hot and Water Quality Control Board, we are sending the reports to them currently.
Great, thank you.
Yep. And that's it for my presentation. Any questions?
Yeah, I was wondering about the testing in comparison with the sodium hypochlorite versus the chlorine. Are we getting the same results?
Yeah, it is as effective as chlorine. As effective. For the last month, we've been tracking the total coliform, and typically we'll see a level of a 1.8 or less, and with chlorine gas, they're very similar, so not much of a change. As far as the TDS goes, it's still early, and we are seeing an effect on the influent water coming in, which is extremely low from all the water that's in the system. And then, since the plant doesn't treat for TDS, we kind of see that kind of go through to the effluent as it passes through. But all the levels are very low from our historic readings.
With regard to total dissolved solids, there's a concentration which probably goes down when we have a lot of I&I getting into the system. But is our permit based on concentration, or is it a kind of a mass amount? So even though there's less concentration, you've got more flow, so you might have a higher mass. What is our requirement kind of on the tail end there with regards to the TDS? Is that a mass or concentration?
So it's an annual average. It's measured at well 31, and then it's basically your annual average flow times 360 milligrams per liter, and then times 8.434. So it is a pounds formula, but it is, since it's related to our flow rate, they cancel out, and then it's basically what we need to look at is the concentration. And if that goes up, then that's what we need to worry about.
So dilution by I&I kind of helps a little bit.
Yeah, just for an example, we typically see about a 300 milligram per liter TDS influent, and right now we're at about 200.
Right.
And at well 31, we typically see 200 or 300. I think the last number was like an 80 from all the water, from all the groundwater influence.
Yeah.
So it was a significant decrease.
That was one number, so it's hard to. You probably need another couple data points, but yeah, it was less than 100, which was very rare.
Right.
Yeah. But again, we've seen no increase, as we had anticipated that when we use the sodium hypochlorite that we would see some form of an increase in final effluent TDS. And since we've started this process, we have not seen any significant increase that was different than gaseous chlorine, with the addition of the sodium, the caustic solution that we would put in the effluent to maintain the pH. So we've not seen anything that we, for red flags for now. Of course, we want to get through the summer months and see how the sodium hypochlorite works through the summer months as well.
Right. Sounds like the coliform readings, that's like instantaneous, somewhat real time, as compared to the TDS is more of a data trend over time, so it will take longer to gain higher levels of confidence in that.
Yes.
And for example, we, I think a year ago, the influent TDS was in the 300 to 400 range, and now we're down to about in the 200 range for influent.
Okay. Other questions from the board? No. Great. Thanks, Greg.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. And Paul is up next.
Good morning, President Wilkins and Board. As you can see from the work order totals, much the same as previous months. A little bit low on the E&I electrical side due to one of the projects that was completed over the month. We got the shop move finally done, so I know we've been talking about that for a while. So a lot of effort has been put into that process, and they've moved into that area, and now we're prepping for IT to move it into their old shop. So work continues on that. We still continue work on the SCADA IT master plan implementation, which is still anticipated to be ready for the board sometime around the September-ish or October meeting. We are still working on the Lucid ECMMS project, still implementing some of the PMs for the different departments, and continuing on with our warehouse effort. So we're still cataloging all the parts in the warehouse. Somewhere in the realm of 6,000 to 7,000 parts so far have been counted, so quite an effort. And then assisting with the chlorine scrubber project as well. A couple of notable items on the maintenance activities that we've had. We had to fabricate a new intermediate bearing assembly for the dewatering cake conveyor. We did some training for a boiler operators workshop. One of our supervisors attended that and brought back some good feedback to bring back to the engineering, one of the engineering projects currently for digestion improvements. So we've got a second stage flux mixer that was rebuilt over the month. And in anticipation of the in-person board meetings too, we've spent a little bit of time cleaning up and thatching the front lawn area and doing a little bit of cleanup out front. So there's a bigger project for that coming, but for now we do need to keep that looking good. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right.
We're multitasking.
So from one of the pictures there, you can see the odorous air sump pump float repair. Got one of our staff members performing a confined entry. You can see him hanging from the one of the lifts there. We've got a picture of a filtrate clarifier blowdown line. One of the flock mixers that was rebuilt. You can see that it's obviously one of the aging units we've got out there. Next slide, please. One of the big projects that also came to completion this month was AWT, and this is a picture of one of the panels up at our AWT control room. This is what it looked like previously. There's a lot of old equipment there. There's a lot of things that were no longer in use or had to be moved, reprogrammed, or transferred over to a programmable logic controller. The next picture over there, you can see what that same panel looks like after that work was completed. It's taken well over a year to do that. There are several bays that look just like that where all this work was done, and that was tracing those literally wire by wire. It was a lot of work, and we finally have gotten that completed all in-house. Wow. So 2 staff members. I'd like to kind of call them out by name. Ryan Schultz, who took the lead on this, and Kevin Woods, who also assisted in the PLC programming on this. It's been quite an effort, and they've done a lot of work over the past year. Next slide, please. And as you can see, just from the front of the panel, the before and after pictures, the after picture being everything's blacked out. We've got some Lexan panels up, and now we have better monitors there for our operators. Hopefully they like the new changes up there and are enjoying the new workspace up there. So that kind of coordinated well with the recent control room upgrade. So that's all I've got for you. Any questions?
Questions? Paul? No, thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
And Aaron, are you taking Jay's spot?
Yes, please.
Great, thanks.
Board of Directors, President Wilkins, Allison. So for the engineering department, current projects we have under construction are the 2021 chlorine scrubber improvements project. We are almost done with that project. Projects in bid phase is the 2022 roof repair project. Projects that we currently have in development are the digestion improvements project, which is work that's going to be done by a consultant. We're in the process of putting together the request for proposal and scope of work. I plan to put that out to bid summertime or late summer, early fall. The 2022 filter influent condition assessment project. We are in study phase. We're still waiting for equipment. There's a backlog on that one. The 2022 sodium hypochlorite disinfection full-scale project. We're currently in the study phase and probably at the end of summertime, the design phase with that. The 2022 Alpine Meadows to Olympic Valley Rehabilitation Project. We're currently developing the scope of work and RFP. Planning to put that out to bid once that's done. And the 2023 TRI digital scanning project is currently in design phase. This is two pictures of the work that's being done for the chlorine scrubber replacement project. The slide on the left is showing the contractor positioning the new chlorine scrubber to be pushed in or drawn into the building. The second slide on the right shows some scaffolding, and what the contractor is doing with that is he's got to position it so we have clearance, adequate clearance on all four sides. Next slide. Once it was put in the correct position, the contractor began hooking up the scrubber. That's the inlet and outlet ducting and wiring to the scrubber. And the picture on the right there, you see the final chlorine scrubber hooked up. And we just completed testing and finishing up some miscellaneous work. Any questions?
Remind me again, I asked this question last time, but if we go to the sodium hypochlorite, the relevance of the chlorine scrubber?
If we ever need to go back to chlorine gas, we do have that option. Right now, Greg, feel free to jump in. We're still currently assessing whether sodium hypochlorite will work. If it doesn't, we want to have that ability to bounce back to chlorine gas.
Because it was this project that kind of was the impetus for the sodium hypochlorite. Right. Potentially, if we had decided to go to sodium hypochlorite a couple years ago and we had confidence in that approach, we may not have done this project. But I remember Jade said that this may have other use if we end up not using it as a chlorine scrubber.
Yeah, so the thought is that we can use it for an odorless air scrubber because these same types of scrubbers can be used in that fashion for headworks or other areas of the plant that we have that we potentially could add odor issues. This could potentially be used.
So if the sodium hypochlorite project is successful and that becomes our long-term disinfection method, we completely abandon chlorine. This equipment potentially could be repurposed for other plant activities.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the thought process as of right now.
Yeah. And I know we'd already hired the contractor, we were mid-contract, it's kind of an awkward time to be like, let's cancel it. The equipment had been purchased, so we were well down this path. But, okay, good enough. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
I think Crystal's next.
Good morning again. So high level, we're continuing to work on the fiscal 24 budget. And we completed the investments for the CDs and securities, working on setting up the Cal class. Then for the billing, one of the key points for the billing customer service areas that Celeste did go around Celeste and I did go around and visit all the member districts to talk to them about the Prop 218 and her counterparts and my counterparts if they are available to see if they have questions, and delivered some of the Prop 218 notices, the official ones, to them to have on hand. Next slide. For the purchasing and admin area, I wanted to shout out Celeste for going around and doing that. She did a really good job when she went around and talked to all the member districts. And then I wanted to also shout out Kaylee. She took on doing the chemical contracts and the bids and posting all of that and the advertising for that, and she did a really good job, and thanks to Rochelle for supporting and helping her so much. Then that's it. And pretty much nothing new on my side. My life has been the Prop 218. Any questions?
Any questions for Crystal? Okay, thanks. Mike, General Manager report.
Okay, good morning, Board of Directors. Mike Peet, Operations Department Manager. So management, just to go over a few things here, task updates. Management staff last month continued to work on the fee and rate study, which we made determinations on today. Management and staff continue to implement new software programs. Staff continue to work on CIP projects. Staff also continue to work on the upcoming budget, as we talked about. The land use research scheduled for a future meeting, I believe next month is what it's scheduled for. And then the land exchange with TTAD. Last month's task focus, was working with HR consultant, working with selected staff on leadership skill building. And we continue to monitor the sodium hydrochloride process for the disinfection. And then I, along with Director Wilkins, or President Wilkins, attended the Truckee Tahoe Airport Board meeting. Any questions? I'd also like to add that we are going to have a staff barbecue on May 25th. And we'd like to invite any board members that would like to attend.
Appreciate the invite.
May 25th for lunch.
I won't be available that day, but I wish I were. Any questions on the GM report? Nice.
Thank you, Mike.
What is that? It's a picture of a bunny rather up there.
That was supposed to be in April. Jay picked it out from his catalogs for Easter.
Yeah.
We didn't get to share it.
Oh, I see. Great. Is there any? Is there any public comment on any of the reports?
No public comment.
Seeing none. Okay, so next is Board of Director comments. Any comments from the board regarding TTSA business? Blake?
And a couple quick ones. One, it was on Greg's report, assisting some of the member agencies with some lab work. So I wanted to thank, that was TSD, wanted to express appreciation for supporting some water quality monitoring we were doing. Two, I'm going to miss the June board meeting. So just letting you guys know about that. I have a conflict that date. And then the third one is I got an email yesterday. At the April board meeting, we had a lot of members of the public addressing the board regarding TSD or TTSA property. I got an email yesterday, and it's still unclear whether they were seeking my participation as TSD's general manager or a board member on TTSA, but the town is forming a Town of Truckee West River Street Revitalization Steering Committee, where they're trying to aggregate a bunch of people, property owners, business owners, Downtown Merchants Association, Chamber of Commerce, Truckee River Legacy Foundation members, members at large, environmental nonprofits, developer builders, and council members, as well as looking for 2 receiver site interested parties. And so that's where they were seeking my input. Again, I don't know whether it's my role at TSD or here, but this is the group that's trying to relocate some of the industrial stuff on West River so they can redevelop that and find a place for it. And so I did not get clarification on what role they were, whether they wanted my representation here on the board or at TSD, but wanted to bring that to your attention. I haven't made any decisions on that, so it sounds a little bit concerning to be in a group with that many folks, and really you're the one with the land they need to make all this happen. It's an awkward potential position to be in. I think I understand the general plan the town has just recently adopted talks about revitalizing that area. They're trying to make movement on it, but I think that if they're looking for a TTSA representation, and Mike, I don't know whether you got a similar request. Maybe they were looking for me because TSD also owns some property that they're looking for, but my sense is if they're looking for a TTSA representative, that I should come through the board. I'm not going to independently join this committee that has Brown Act requirements and is being adopted without getting consent from the other board members. And they're moving quickly because I think they're trying to finalize the steering committee, they said, next week. Dan, I don't know if you know much about that from the town.
I think your summary was accurate. I think they're trying to put this committee together, and I don't know if the request to you was as the GM of TSD, as Blake Trezin, Glenshire resident, or as Blake Trezin, Vice President of the TTSA board.
Yeah, it was unclear to me as well. It was sent to my TSD email.
Yeah.
They haven't really been knocking. We have less land, not 900, we have 40 acres. So likely, I think the receiver site in their mind is probably still continues to be TTSA. And so
probably
again,
there's other property in Truckee though that could absorb some of that as well, I think.
So again, if they're looking for a TTSA representative on that for the receiver site, I feel like I should come back and get consent from the board to participate in that and represent TTSA. So
and it could be either it could be that it would be a more appropriate role for the GM as well.
Right.
So either way.
Yeah, so some discussion I think should happen, and so I don't know that I'm going to be able to, if that's the role, I don't think that may come back in June. I'm not here, but I assume that will accommodate you.
So I guess a question, if they are interested in having you represent TTSA, are you interested in doing that if the rest of the board is comfortable with it, or would you prefer not to?
I haven't gotten my mind around it yet. I think we should have that, deliberate on that, and whether it's a board member or a, staff person that should participate in it. I'm still trying to understand exactly, what they're doing, and, it seems like something we should do a little bit more research on before jumping in. So.
Okay. Thanks for that.
So I won't be here in June as well. Is that a quorum issue?
Dale, are you going to be here in person in June?
I've got some comments to make, but I'm in a little bit of a grumpy mood right now, Dan, so I think I'll spare you all until next month.
Okay. Will you be here in person next month?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
So we would have
I hope so, providing that I get a release from my surgeon, but I think it's looking good.
Okay. If you were to not be able to come in person, if you could let either Richard or Mike know, because if you're not able to make it, we'll have to reschedule the meeting.
I'll stay. I stay very close in touch with Rochelle and Mike and staff, so I'll let you know what's up.
So, yeah, it sounds like Dave had something come up, so he won't be able to be here, nor will Blake. So we may want to reschedule it anyway.
Which would suit me. Yeah.
It would.
We have tax roll items that need to be approved. So we need to have a June meeting at some point,
Right.
even if it's a special one at another.
Is it the board's preference to move up or drop it back? And do we need to stick with a Wednesday, or are we open to a different day?
Well, why don't we?
I'm open to anything.
Okay. So
Yeah,
it's
I'm
flexible.
out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday that week, so if those dates don't work.
If we did it Tuesday,
Tuesday would work.
Is that the 20th?
That would be the 20th.
is that?
That doesn't work.
What's that?
Travel.
Okay.
So,
Would I think it'd be ideal if we could come up with a date where we're all available. So the 20th doesn't
it
work.
does work for me.
I don't know whether moving it up. I know that part of the problem was is that that's the the way the third Wednesday came. It's a little the last possible Wednesday. I don't know if we can move it
Right.
to the second Wednesday. It's
June 28th. There's also
Or-
June 28th would be the Wednesday after,
What about the Thursday or Friday the week prior?
the 15th.
15th
Did you
or
say-
16th.
Did you say you were going Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday?
just the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd.
Okay,
So the
the 15th and 16th.
And I'm gone
I mean, sorry, the
21st, 22nd.
14th or 15th.
What's that?
June 14th
I'm
or
open to
15th?
all.
yeah, those would work.
Does that work for
The-
be able to meet with the finance committee?
What was the date, the final date?
We're looking at June 14th or 15th, so that would,
The
I guess
week
we'd be,
prior.
yeah, we'd be able to meet on the
Not
6th.
the 14th won't work for me.
Okay.
The 15th could though.
15th.
So the packet items would be due the 8th, Rochelle?
Yes. Or, well, they would be due the 6th, so that we could have it to the board on the 8th.
So, and the earliest we'd be able to meet with the finance committee would be on the 6th, right? That Tuesday before, would you be able to?
Finance committee that month is actually the 13th,
Yeah,
but
but-
I think there was a conflict because Blake will not be here. An option, I don't know if you guys are open to it, is just that special meeting that we have on the 30th, because it's really just budget and we don't have a finance committee meeting. And I can turn the budget around and have time and not have to prepare for a finance committee meeting.
And have the budget for that.
Yeah, so for the budget, so we have a special meeting on the 30th for the budget, the
Right.
full.
Can I throw another wrench in everyone's plans? Your second read of the ordinance that was introduced today needs to be adopted at a regular meeting. We were planning to bring that back to you in June, so it would not be able to be adopted at a special meeting. The board could take action, not today, at another special meeting to reset your regular meeting, but we're talking about a series of meetings in order to have a meeting.
So it's not just, I know that we've had postponed regular meetings, or can you do
Adjourned regular meetings, yes.
I mean, if we reschedule the regular meeting from the 21st to the 15th, is that still a regular meeting?
Yes, it is
Okay.
possible to do that, but you cannot do that today, unfortunately, since it wasn't on the agenda. You would need to have another meeting after this one to take that action.
That takes board action to move
It
a
does.
regular meeting. It's not just a staff activity.
You're correct. Regular meetings have to be set by the board for action.
Fun.
That is a big wrench.
So what you're saying is we'd have to schedule a special meeting to
Schedule a meeting, yes, sir. That's right.
Can we add this as an urgency item for this meeting? Given that this information just became known, that we've got these director conflicts?
Unfortunately, I don't think it qualifies under the very limited power to add items to the agenda that were not posted.
Okay.
And the concern with the 21st, you have the quorum so long as Dale can make it, but, you know, it'd be nice to not be on the edge with given Dale's situation and the items that are coming up, possibly be nice to have the full board.
Yes.
We can have
Available.
that quorum or that regular meeting.
Could we
for
push?
That one item.
just keep that one item on the regular, and then you could have a special meeting for the other items.
That's a good idea. Works for me. So do the special meeting, which will be everything but the rate setting, like on the, say, June 15th. And then have the regular meeting, which would have the second reading of the ordinance on the 21st.
Yeah, I think that plan works legally. It may be worthwhile to check in and make sure that we're not holding a meeting that doesn't have to happen for the second reading. My sense was this is something that would be important to have in place.
For the fiscal 24 billings, yes.
Right. It's basically putting our rates in effect, right?
The connection charges, the updated
It's for the
connection
fee
case.
table.
Yes.
Yeah, the connection fees. So.
Oh, it's just the connection
It's,
fees.
and ideally, we're trying to get
It's
that
not
in
that big a
before
deal.
the fiscal July 1 of 2024, so that we can start the year with synced up tables for billing purposes. And then we also have the tax roll that we have to do sometime in June.
As a practical matter, would it impact anybody who came in to pay a connection fee, basically in the interim until
We did
your
it.
July meeting?
We can do the tax roll items at the regular meeting too.
Seems like we've
As
been
long as we
surviving
have it.
for a few years now the way it was.
Can you have a meeting where, with just, the quorum is 3 people, but can one of the 3, if Dale somehow is prohibited from traveling, can one of the members of the quorum be a remote?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay,
Up to 3 people here.
okay.
So this whole, it's really just this connection fee ordinance housekeeping.
It is,
Talking
and it
about-
was only specifically affect a few certain connection types.
Yeah, so are you saying July?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
adopted in July.
Take it
instead
over
of
to
June.
Yeah, the tax roll is way more important.
Yeah, so why don't we just do that? Why don't we do a special meeting on June 15th, do the second reading of the connection fee ordinance at our July meeting, and hopefully the sun keeps coming up between June and July. I think it will. Does that work for the rest of the board?
So special meeting 9 o'clock on Thursday the 15th.
Yes. And really, it's in the interest of having a full board here
Okay,
for the bulk of our business items.
that should work.
Okay. Does that work for you, Dave?
It works for me.
Okay.
Yeah. The rest of my comment, we were talking about land use, and I went back to my board and talked about various things. And one of the things that came up was manager there's been in the sewer water business all his life, and he said there is no good neighbor for a sewer plant. He related the story about putting a sewer plant out in farmlands down Central California, and nobody around, no problem, everything was fine. And the city fathers decided to use some of the land for a concrete crushing plant. Now, whatever that is, I don't know, but I guess they retrieved the recycled stuff. And the next thing that happened is the concrete crushing plant manager came back with complaints to the city that he couldn't keep employees next to the sewer plant. So it's like,
Was it right next door?
whatever, but the idea being that whatever we do or decide with all this land, I'm sure we can't make a rapid decision just because of we haven't decided on the chlorine issue yet. We still need the buffer of that. And that was just some of the feedback that I got, that be careful what you do, you gotta live with it. And that, I was driving by the bus plant, I was looking at their fuel tanks that are sitting out there. There's no containment barrier around them. And if any of that goes in the ground, we get the blame. I keep thinking, what do we do? And I was looking across, I was bicycling down the Legacy Trail yesterday, and I was looking across at some of the industrial that they want to get out of downtown. I don't think we want it over here either. So,
Not the way it looks now.
no, well, I mean, whatever it's gonna look like. So I'm just bringing that up that, you know, we need to really think about what we're doing. And if we get to that point, you know, a lot of the people like the fire department and stuff, they're looking for free land. And I think it's up to us, to our ratepayers, not to be giving away land. Not, you know, I mean, I think we should get fair market value in rent or sale when we get to that. That was all my comments. And that's kind of bringing back from folks in Alpine Meadows.
Cool. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Other director's comments? I'll put one in. Mike mentioned that he and I attended the Airport District Board meeting.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was within a week of our last regular meeting. And bottom line is that the Airport District has received approval from the FAA to basically proceed with the land exchange that we've all been talking about. So that was, it wasn't an action item. It was basically the general manager was letting the board know that. They had some discussion around it. Some of it circled in on this whole industrial conversation where there was at least a couple of the airport board members were questioning whether or not they wanted to follow through with the land exchange, thinking that potentially the airport district would want to make that land that they own down at I'll call it the TTSA elevation, available for industrial development if there weren't other options in the community. So that was some of the dialogue I heard from that group. So we'll probably hear more on that as time goes on. So so I made some comments. If any of the board members, I think those airport district board meetings are recorded. So maybe Mike could ask someone or Rochelle maybe could go to the airport district website, see if we can find that meeting recording. It was probably 20 minutes in, Mike?
Yeah.
Something like that.
About that.
Yeah, maybe we find the timestamp and send a link out to the other board members. So if they want to see what I said and see what the airport board members were talking about, you could get a flavor for what that conversation was firsthand. So that was that. And I believe that concludes, well, there's no public comment, board comment. So I believe that concludes our open session meeting. We will be adjourning the closed session for a conference with legal counsel considering significant exposure to litigation, one case. So with that, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Yeah.
Thanks.